So, Hari Om, chapter 12, Krishna goes on to explain to Arjun that there are certain ways of behaving, certain personality changes, certain code of conduct that will help on this path. And therefore, it becomes a very helpful text to know that we can make lifestyle changes. And those lifestyle changes happen first outwardly. We may do it mechanically outwardly, but slowly it's the mind that has to be brought down to the changes that Krishna is expecting from a true seeker and a true devotee. So then we know, okay, so am I a true seeker and a true devotee? We can make out because there are very clear markers that Bhagwan has pointed out. That makes the text so very lucid and so very followable, and not abstruse or abstract. That's why we love to go into this Bhakti Prasang of chapter 12. Bhakti, I may mention, is not a separate prasang in any of the Upanishads or in the Vedas. Why? Because we have Upasana Kand, we have Karma Kand, we have Jnana Kand in the Vedas. But there is no separate prasang as Bhakti Prasang in the Vedas. But in Gita, yes, in Gita we have this beautiful chapter called Bhakti Yoga. Why? In the Vedas they have not included Bhakti as a separate, let's say, an attribute of a seeker, because it is expected that unless you have Bhakti or belief or conviction, Dhrida Nishchaya, which is how Krishna puts it, unless we have conviction in that higher power, we are not going to approach that higher power through any of the methods of Karma Yoga or Upasana or Jnana Yoga or Dhyan Yoga. How can we approach it unless the very uddeshya of the higher power is missing? So it is an underlying, accepted, assumed fact in the Vedas. And in Gita, explicitly Bhakti Yoga is mentioned here. Bhakti as in an understanding that there is this power and it's constant, it is avyaya, it's nitya, and it is with us all the time. We are essentially that. That conviction doesn't hold with us for long. Why? Because our senses, of course, are so busy interacting with other objects in the world. Our body is also an object, and so is the mind. And so guna guneshu vartante, the objects are interacting with objects, and we find that that conviction, that bhakti, it doesn't hold for too long. Now, how does Bhagwan start leading Arjun very compassionately into this bhakti yoga and this personality or lifestyle change? He has already mentioned in chapter 12 that if your karma, anything that you do in your life, your vocation, your profession, your hobbies, if it is sakam karma, sakam meaning desire driven, then naturally your ego center is strengthened. It is a common understanding that the ego center is strengthened when we are doing any sakam karma. That means any karma which is meant only for me, for my benefit, and the sukha of myself or my family. Desire driven, sakam karma. Bhagwan says just make a small shift to nishkam karma. Whatever you are doing, whatever you are involved with, just make it nishkam karma, which means what? That karma phal tyaga, which is actually the Brahmastra, you can say. Brahmastra meaning the very sharp and the very powerful instrument of personal change in our lives. If we want to make a shift in our lives, karma phala tyaga, which means no hanging on to the anticipation of the sukha of the phal. Not to give up the phal at all, but the phal will come anyway to us because that's a natural law when we have acted. But to give up the tyag is of the anticipation of that sukha that I will get in the future when I get that phal. You see how we are tied to something that's out there in the future and not in our hands. Bhagwan says the moment you do karma phal tyag, that same ego center is actually weakened. The same ego center is reduced. And therefore this becomes like a magic bullet. So we don't have to struggle with the ego. Bhagavan has said that whatever you do, just say first of all that it is Ishwar Arpan Buddhi, I am doing it for the Lord. If you can't do that, then at least stop hanging on to the phala and let it come as prasad to you. Any one of these things is going to reduce your ego center, because that is the big obstruction. And therefore he says in verse number 13 of chapter 12, in the second line, nirmamo nirahankaraha, because this nirmamo nirahankara means without ahankara, is the kind of person who is going to gain the uddeshya, going to reach the heights of spiritual success. Why? Because this ahankar is a big obstruction. If you are without ahankar, then naturally we become adveshta. There is no one to hate, there is no one to resent, and therefore the first word in the same verse is adveshta sarva bhutanam. Also become adveshta, hurt no one, hate no one. How does this come about? It's a natural corollary of a nirahankara. No ego, there is nothing, there is no center from which we are hating or hurting. Feeling hurt? Okay. And karma phal. So nirahankara is the magic bullet, and that makes us adveshta, which Bhagavan expects us to be, to hurt, not to hurt, and not to hate, because it's coming from our ego center, adveshta. So it's all connected. And where is the ahankar coming from? It's coming from all the actions that we do, which are sakam. Sakam meaning desire driven. It's for me, mere liye hai or mera hai. So Bhagavan says, okay, drop that too. In the second line he says nirmamo. Nirmamo means mera hai, mere liye hai. That also we need to drop. Having done this, we can become very spiritual seekers. Nirmamo nirahankara. When we say not for me, not for my own sukh only, then naturally the ego is reduced. Ego reduced, we become adveshta, cannot hate anyone, don't feel the hurt of other people. It's just the ego which is hurting so much. And finally he says, before that he has already said, if I am not working for myself on my own sukha and the sukha of my immediate family and family members, then what is my motivation? What is the motivation for me to work, do any action in the world? And therefore we have the Vedas and the scriptures to guide us. Yes, your works can still be for Deva Yagya, for nature, for environment, for protection of the environment, for Pitra Yagya, for worship of the ancestors who have given you an excellent genetic treasure, or genetic, let's say, dharohar, from which we are acting right now. We are acting out of understanding or compassion or dynamism or spirituality or seeking this because of that genetic composition. Pitra Yagya, okay. All our actions have to come from gratitude only. For Deva Yagya, nature and environment, Pitra Yagya and ancestors, Rishi Yagya. All the rishis who have put in so much effort to find the truth, to have the truth revealed to them. We don't have the capacity to go into such deep samadhi and go into that deep samadhi and unearth the truth which words cannot describe. The rishis have very kindly put it into human words, and therefore we are grateful to them. How can we work from gratitude? We can work from gratitude by serving the scriptures, by listening or teaching or reading or serving or supporting institutions who are serving the scriptures and the swamis. In any one of these days, in any one of these ways, we can offload our debt to the rishis. So Rishi Yagya and Bhuta Yagya, all creatures on this planet, we have to look after them, and they are all gentle creatures of the Lord. And also Manushya Yagya, all the people have contributed to our upbringing and to our sustenance and to our safety in some way or the other. We are here because Manushya Yagya, Bhagavan says if you have this sense of gratitude towards nature and people and all creatures around you, you will never be unhappy, because all actions will emanate from gratitude. And once all actions emanate from gratitude, we can serve the society through anything. We may be engineers or doctors, but it is the quality of mind which is acting out of gratitude, saying, thank God I have the ability to be a surgeon or an engineer or a homemaker or a teacher or a professor. Thank God for that, and I will serve my profession the best I can. I'll give my 100%. That sincerity comes from bhakti. The bhakti, which means gratitude. Gratitude to what? To that providence which has given all these abilities to us to act at all, leave alone act in excellence. And therefore Bhagavan says, yes, you will act in ways that will bring about excellence and equanimity in your own life. And for that, in acting in those ways, you will become, Bhagavan is so confident. He says, you as a seeker, Arjun, will become Adveshta. That means hating no one. Maitra, friendly towards everyone. Karunaha, compassion. We have to be compassionate towards those who hurt us, because they do it inadvertently. They don't know that they are only nimitta matra. They are doing it without thinking. And we have to feel sorry for them, because in their hurt or in their manipulation, they are creating new karma for themselves. And therefore they are hurting themselves in the long run. Maybe not immediately. Immediately you don't see that they are paying for it. So you feel very sad for them that, oh, ultimately they're going to pay for it. So have karuna. Karuna is a very beautiful word. Nirmamo nirahankaraha. Oh, everything is for me and for my own consumption, for my own material consumption and for my own happiness. Everything on this earth is made for my happiness, and therefore if I have the wealth, I will consume as much electricity as I want, as much carbon, exude as much carbon as chlorofluorocarbons from my refrigerators and from my air conditioners as I want, and the AC cars that I have. Why? Because I can afford it. Everything on this earth is not meant for our consumption. That is the little lesson we have forgotten to teach our next generation, that you can afford it, but the earth cannot afford so much of pollution. And the earth has begun to, we are already too late into this lesson. The earth has begun to answer our next generation that no, sorry, everything was not meant for you. You are meant to give back to the earth and to the people. Nirahankara. This can be done only if we have a new generation of people who have put aside their ahankar. I can do this. I can afford it. I have the wealth to consume this. Consumerism and materialism is a Western concept. So unfortunately, Western education has brought in even the culture. So education or language brings with it the culture and the philosophy of that civilization. That is what has happened to us. The whole bundle has come with us. We were just meant to learn the language, because we were meant under the British to serve them and to learn the language so that their services, their railways and their central services could be serviced by clerks. So we were meant only to learn the language. But what has happened, and it's inevitable, the language brings with it its bundle of culture and civilization and philosophy. And the philosophy has been in the West for generations quite materialistic, consumeristic. And that's how we have got into this mess that we are in. It's time for us to turn back to our old civilization, where for generations it was said that no, you have to work out of a gratitude for nature, Devi Yagya, Rishi Yagya, the scriptures, and for Manushya Yagya, for other people. Why only for yourself and your family? Other people, Manushya Yagya and Bhuta Yagya, protect all the creatures. For so many thousands of years, it's time for us to turn back to our own civilization. In chapter 12, verse 13, Bhagavan goes on to say, you have to have in your personality Samadukha Sukha Kshami. This has come so often. Sukha dukkha same kritva. It has come in second chapter also. Because this is the highest quality of a realized person or even a seeker, a serious seeker. A serious seeker is one who is equanimous in dukkha and sukha. Sama means equanimous in dukkha and sukha. Why? Why is this an expectation from every seeker? When you know that this world hurts, when there are situations and circumstances which are out of our control and they do leave us devastated and hurting, then why should this expectation be there? Because it's for our own good. It is for us to protect our minds, our own selves and our own minds from carrying the scars and the hurts of disappointment and dejection and sorrow. So, do you mean to say there will be no sorrow and dejection and no hurt and disaster in this world? No, that's not the promise that Krishna is making. The law of nature will carry on. There will be Devi Apadas, that means natural disasters, and also hurt from situations and other people, and from our own minds, the working of our own mind, which creates a lot of havoc. Yes, all this will always be there. What is expected is that, yes, pain will also be there. Bodily pain and mental pain. Pain will be there. But it is expected of us that as a seeker, we all have suffering, to accept it first of all. Accept it that there is suffering in the world and it's not only for us. Not only for, we are not picked out for it. Yes, some may have more, some may have less. You see the material distribution in the world also. Some have more material wealth and some have less. Why is it so? It's all karmic law. Some have more suffering, some have less. It's the karmic law. The acceptance that there is suffering and this, whatever I have right now is my lot, is the first expectation of a good seeker. Secondly, how quickly can I accept it and how quickly can I stop complaining of my own suffering? Yes, in the beginning it will take me off guard, but how quickly can I get above it and rise above it and stop complaining, because I'm not the only one. You know that old story about the woman who had lost her young boy to a disease, and she took the dead boy to the feet of Gautama Buddha and said, "No, you have said that there is a way out of suffering. Now you keep your promise. I want a way out of my suffering." And she went weeping and wailing. It's a very common story, commonly heard story. And Buddha said, "Okay, do one thing. Go to your own village and bring me one single grain of mustard from that household where there has been no death." And so she said, "Okay, will I come out of my sorrow then?" "Yes, sure." And she did that. She went around in the village and there was not one single house. She came back empty-handed to Gautama Buddha. There was not one single house or home or palace or hovel or hut where there had not been the bereavement and the sorrow of death. So no one could offer her one grain of mustard. And she came back and she said, "Yes, now I understand." So she did not come out of sorrow, but she came out of her misunderstanding that why should sorrow hit me? How quickly can we stop complaining? How quickly can we accept the pain? And how quickly can we understand that pain has a purpose? Every pain that we suffer, it could be mental, it could be physical, psychological, it has a purpose. What is that purpose? Think about it. The purpose is that through every pain, we are meant to evolve spiritually. We can also sink spiritually by becoming extremely bitter and vengeful about the situation. That will be the downfall of our spiritual life. But it is also the same situation is an opportunity to rise to a spiritual height by coming out of it and experiencing the pain. Yes, my body experiences pain, and so does my mind when it is in great confusion and hurting out of slight. Slight meaning किसी ने अपमान कर दिया, and my mind can't get out of it for days together, and it is torturing itself. Other people have said what they had to say and forgotten about it. My mind is torturing itself day in and day out. This is my self-torture. Now, The idea is, if I realize that this is what is happening and I'm torturing myself, I'm experiencing pain and I'm meant to come out of it, know the pain, experience it. Yes, bereavement is there, death is there. See it as sorrow, but don't let that sorrow leave the scars on our mind, the deep marks on our mind. The same with joy, actually. That's coming up. Even joys, when we experience great exhilaration and joy, sometimes it leaves such a deep mark, such a deep impression on our mind, that when we do not have the ability to experience it again or to see that joy continuously, we are again steeped in sorrow. So do not allow the joy to leave an impression on the mind, nor the sorrows to leave scars on the mind, but experience both, because they are part of nature. They are part of the law of nature. The moment we experience it, like that woman who understood when she went back to Gautama Buddha and said, yes, okay, I understand now. No one is free from this bereavement, and our karmic law will follow. And so I will, of course, I will grieve the loss of my son, but I will not let it make me bitter or leave a great scar on my mind. That is the mark of a seeker. This is what Bhagwan means by the second line, Samadukha Sukha. Can you become a Samadukha Sukha person? That's what he is expecting. Why? Because once a person realizes that, oh, the treasures that I have no one can take away, then a person will not grieve even the loss of objects in the world. What do I mean by the real treasures? We have mentioned that the real Devi Sampatti, or the real treasures that Bhagwan has offered, and it's for us to take, for us to accept. What is that? Shama, Dhamma, mind control, sense control, Uparati, ability to withdraw from temptations when we are faced with them, and Titiksha, a great sense of fortitude, to be able to bear any sorrow or any great excitement for that matter without being shaken. That is Titiksha. Shama, Dhamma, Uparati, Titiksha, Shraddha. Have faith that there is only one truth in the world, and I'm meant to actually find it. I'm not meant to chase after small joys in the world and on a wild goose chase and back to my deathbed and then again born again. That Shraddha, that Bhakti and Samadhan, that is that Shanti which comes from the understanding. These are my treasures. Who can take away these treasures? So, like a millionaire says, okay, what's a few thousand rupees? It's okay, it doesn't affect me too much. If he has to give it away, he doesn't feel shaken by it. In the same way, a Siddha person or a seeker feels so enriched by the inner sampatti, if we have cultivated it, if we have earned it through real seeking, Shama, Dhamma, Uparati, Titiksha, forbearance, take everything in our own stride as a law of nature. It is prasad from Bhagwan. That bhakti, that shraddha, that treasure will keep us so stable and so unshaken that we will say, okay, so what are a few sorrows here and there? It's okay. Like a millionaire says, what are a few thousand rupees here and there? It's okay. That way you will feel like a millionaire, a truly enriched person with the sampatti, the real treasure of a seeker. Bhagwan also goes on to say, Kshami, last word. Nirmamo nirahankaraha samadukha sukha kshami. Become forgiving. It is in your interest. It is not because Bhagwan needs your forgiveness for other people, nor do other people need your forgiveness for God's sake. It is we in our own spiritual upliftment. We need forgiveness, not from others, but the forgiveness of our own forgiveness of others. Why? Because we are trying to evolve. And when can we forgive? When do we become kshami? When we realize, oh, even other people are trying to evolve, by the way, and they may have done something wrong because they may not have been at that stage of evolution where they can understand the higher truth. So they step on your toes, they do harsh things, they do unruly things, and mostly we think about relatives and so-called close friends. Sometimes when we lose friendships and relatives, and people and colleagues in our offices. These are the people whom we interact with very closely. These are the people whom we end up not being able to forgive because we're interacting too closely with them. Bhagwan says, later on he also says, be udasin. There's another quality coming up. Udasin. Be a little indifferent, be a little distant. Make people count in your life, but not too much. These are the words of Rudyard Kipling, the famous Indian journalist. He says, make people count in your life. Yes, they do have a value in your life. Everyone does, but not too much. Udasin. We are coming to that word udasin later on, but right now it's the big quality of kshami. We have to concentrate. How can we forgive when we realize that when people are hurting or sometimes doing untoward things, or being ungrateful when we have helped them, or not returning great wealth that they have borrowed from us, and they owe us something and they forget that they owe us something. It's okay. It is their spiritual immaturity. It is time to forgive and feel sad for them, because it is that stage of spiritual immaturity at which they are. So now, how did we evolve physically over millions of years? So Darwin's theory says it took millions and millions of years for us to evolve to who we are right now, from a single cell organism, an amoeba. That's who we were. One single cell. Physical evolution I'm talking about. Okay. What about spiritual evolution? Coming out from being extremely selfish and desire-driven and self-centered and materialistic, consumeristic. From that stage, coming up to be nirmamo, loosening the hold and the grip of ego, nirahankaraha, adveshta, not trying to hurt other people or being hurt ourselves. Being equanimous to this spiritual height. Won't it take millions of years? Yes. But nature has taken its own course in terms of our physical evolution. Nature has helped us. Who can help us with our spiritual evolution? That is in our hands. For that, there will be no Darwin's natural law which will step in and say, okay, it will take its own course. Actually, it will take millions of years, much longer. But a lot of our spiritual evolution is in our own hands to hasten the progress of our own evolution. And therefore, the spiritual evolution is what we are here for. That's the entire purpose of our. So be kshami. If you don't forgive, you're stuck in your own spiritual path. So be kshami. That's what Bhagwan is advising. For example, and we all know the story of Rishi Dayanand, right? And these are true stories. You read them in their biographies. Rishi Dayanand, actually, there were some people, and everyone, even rishis, even munis, even mahatmas, they have enemies. Don't worry. We are not the only ones who are envied and hated by someone or the other in society. So there was someone who was envious of his stage, of his mahima, because rishis have stage and mahima and gyan. So he was poisoned actually by his own cook. God knows who had asked the cook to poison him. The same as Lata Mangeshkar, if you remember, in her biography it is mentioned that many years ago her own cook had poisoned her. We don't know. The cooks won't do it of their own accord. They have no great desire to be a great singer like Lata, or the cook of Dayanand to be a great Mahatma. Why would they do it of their own accord? They were probably tempted by someone else. We never got to know who in Lata Mangeshkar's case, and neither in Rishi Dayanand's case. We don't. But what happened? Dayanandji came to know that it was the cook who had poisoned him. He came out of it, thankfully. But after that, you know what Dayanandji did? It is there in his biography. These are true stories. One fine day, he gave this cook some wealth, some money, and put together some clothes and some belongings, and he said, make haste, here's the money for your train, go back to your homeland. Why? Escape from here, because you know when my own devotees, when they come to know what they have done, they will not forgive you, they will hurt you, they will destroy you, if not kill you. My own devotees, to protect you from my own devotees, here is some wealth, take a train and please go back to your homeland. This is called Kshami, one who can forgive. Why? Because Dayananji probably understood this poor man, first of all, he didn't do it at his own accord. And secondly, even if he had found out who had done it out of envy, do you think Dayananji wouldn't have forgiven even that person? In fact, he would have felt very sorry for him. कि आप spiritually इतने गिर गए हो, आपको तो इतने million years लगेंगे और उठने के लिए spiritually. I feel sorry for your journey, spiritual journey ahead. कितने जन्म लेने पड़ेंगे for you to evolve. He would have felt very sad for him. Same as Jesus Christ. He knew that he had been carrying his own cross and he had been nailed to the cross. For what? For the sins of others. He had not committed a sin. But he said at the end, his last words, if we are to believe what's written in the Bible, forgive them, Lord, for they know not what they do. If they knew what they are doing, if they had so much spiritual, let's say, understanding, why would they do it? So you have to forgive them, Lord. And he pleaded with his own God, Jesus Christ, and he said, forgive them, Lord, for they know not what they do. Same with us. If there were people who actually understood that what they were doing, if they were acting out of very common plebeian kind of envy or jealousy or hatred, of which they have no control, on which they have no control. So you feel sad for them, isn't it? कि इतना control भी नहीं है अपने ऊपर, that they are acting out of these common motives. You feel very sad for them. So that's why Kshami, it's important to be Kshami, to forgive, to forget and to move on, because also it will block your own progress, because your own mind, our own mind then is churning that action of others all the time. And then I cannot see the Lord unless there is space in my mind, unless my mind is clear and clean and cleansed to feel that subtlety. Bhagwan is such a subtle tattva. उस subtlety के लिए I have to cleanse my mind. तो वो थोड़ी heavy cleansing चाहिए होती है. Because even in our puja graha, when I go to the puja graha and sit at the altar or any temple or mosque, I need that environment which is quiet, clean, completely, and fragrant, and swept clean, and beautiful, and a lovely breeze blowing. तभी हमारा मन लगता है भगवान में, isn't it? तो हमारे मन के अंदर वो cleanliness और वो स्वच्छता और वो फ्रेग्रेंस और वो नहीं होगी तो मंदिर की तरह अपने मन के अंदर भी हम एकाग्र, I cannot concentrate on God. So make that mind the temple for God. Make it cleansed like the temple. The mind has to be the temple. Otherwise, how can I focus? The same thing happened to Shankaracharya. If we are able to cleanse the mind, forgive, forget and move on for our own progress, Shankaracharya also, you know that story. It's there in his biography also, that while he was traversing one of the forests, he got captured by some tribals who decided that they had to behead him and to sacrifice him to some pagan gods. They were doing some sacrificial fire, and they said, yes, he has to be sacrificed in their ritual. So Bhagwan said, for your ritual, okay. So my head is not so important. Okay, you can. He gave his consent for the tribal ritual of those forest dwellers, and he agreed. But unfortunately for the tribals, Shankaracharya ji was rescued right at the last moment by his own devotees, and he escaped unhurt. And thank God for that, because then we have commentaries on 11 Upanishads by Shankaracharya, which we can study in simple Sanskrit, because Shankaracharya lived on to write those commentaries for us, isn't it? So that's why Rishi Yagya, we have a great debt to pay to all our rishis, and that debt we are not paying through our service to the scriptures of paying attention, listening as much as we can, and doing enough of Shravanam, Mananam, reading or teaching or continuous contact with the scriptures. That is our debt that we need to pay. Coming back to Kshami, Bhagwan, what has he said? He has given pointers to Arjun to say, hey, look, you can cleanse your mind enough to be able to reach me and to evolve spiritually. And that is in chapter 12, verse 13, he says, Adveshta, not hating, Sarva Bhutanam, not hating anyone, Maitra Karuna Evacha, Nirmamo Nirahankaraha, Sarva Dukkha, Sukha Kshami. Be equanimous, be forgiving, be less egoistic, and here you are. You're going to reach me, no doubt. There are some more qualities coming up, and maybe we can latch on to something easier that we can actually perform or attain. Let's see what these qualities are. Number 14. Santushtaha satatam yogi yatatma dridha nishchayaha. Santushtaha, be contented. Satatam, be steady in your meditation or steady in our studies or meditation. Satatam yogi yatatma, self-controlled. It's only our lack of control that is leading us awry on our path. Dridha nishchayaha, that means no matter what is tempting me in the world, if I know my uddesha, my purpose, nothing can shake me from it and cannot alter my course. Santushtaha satatam yogi yatatma dridha nishchayaha mayyarpita mano buddhihi. Why don't you put your mind and your intellect, dedicate it to me, put it on me. No matter what you're doing, Bhagwan expects that. Mayyarpita, Maya means to me, arpita, mujhe arpit kar do. Kya cheez? Mano buddhihi. Yo mad bhaktah same priyaha. Yo, aisa bhakta to mujhe bahut priya hai. Bhagwan says so lovingly to Arjun. Yo mad bhakta same priyaha. I love such people, he says. What kind of people? So the one who is not thinking all the time that there is some void in my life. Of course, we always feel that there is some void, something missing, and that something can be fulfilled with bringing in some joy from outside. So there is something out there, my belief is, there is something out there in the world that can fulfill me, and that belief itself leads me outside and makes me asantushtaha, always hankering for something. Asantushtaha. In fact, samadhan and santushti is one of our greatest treasures. As Tulsidas said, that if you have santushti, then all the other treasures are dhuri saman. They are like dust, like mud. All the other treasures that we have gathered so painstakingly in this life, they are nothing but dust compared to the treasure of santushti. Yes, of course, the world will bring in some joys. No one is denying that. But how fulfilling are these joys? They are temporary. So, Kamini, Kirti, Kanchan. Kamini, of course, means pleasures of the flesh and the body. And Kirti is man, samman, and name and fame and applause. And Kanchan, gold and wealth and property. Kamini, Kirti, Kanchan is there and it brings me pleasure. How can Krishna deny it? No, he is not denying it. He is saying, wo temporary hai bhai. It is not going to go with you. But with us, the treasure that will go beyond this body, beyond this flesh, to our death and beyond the death, will be Shama, Dhamma, Oparati, Titiksha, Shraddha, our belief in our own evolution. These are qualities. Our real treasures are those which go beyond the grave. Our unreal treasures are those which remain on this side of our grave. How simple is the truth? So he's saying, Santushtaha, I want. That will never end, because that's a kind of slavery. Slavery to what? To sansar. I'm a slave to sansar the moment I say I want. If those things come to us in a sahaj form, because I have a family, I have a job, and I have a certain position in life, many things will come to me as a gift, sahaj, without I want seeking, without my thirst for it. That is a gift. When it comes to you as a gift, accept it, enjoy it, leave it. But we are talking of the slavery of I want. So the number of I wants are directly proportional to our sense of incompleteness. That means हमारी सेंस ऑफ इनकम्प्लीटनेस और असंतुष्टि कितनी भारी है, कितनी बड़ी है, इट डिपेंड्स डायरेक्टली प्रोपोर्शनल टू हमारे मन में कितने आई वांट है. डायरेक्ट इक्वेशन है. डायरेक्ट इक्वेशन. ओके, सो नाउ the only purpose for which I am here is not the accumulation of I want, but to know myself. How can I know myself? Again, a reminder that chapter 12 already has mentioned you can know yourself through so many ways, through karma yoga, bhakti yoga, jnana yoga, upasana. Choose your path and that, stick to it. Then if you stop looking outside and stop being extroverted all the time, you will know that looking within is your way of finding the truth and finding yourself and finding happiness. They are all there. There's this famous painting, a beautiful painting which was made by a famous artist, I forget his name, and it was up there for display in a studio. That painting showed a beautiful house with a door which was shut, and outside the door stood Jesus Christ with a lantern in his hand, and the light from a warm yellow light from the lantern, it sort of sparked the beauty of that door. And he stood out there, and a critic of that painting, he came to the artist and he said, you know, something is wrong with this painting, something is missing here. So the artist said, well, what is missing here? There's this warm glow of light from the lantern, and there's a house which Jesus Christ wants to enter. And the critic said, the door has no door handle. So the artist said, oh no, that's not a mistake at all. You see, the door handle is on the inside. The inside. That means there's nothing in this world which can be achieved permanently and forever from the outside. The door handle is inside. तो हम introverted जैसे ही होंगे, we will stop being kripan. Kripana phala hetavah, which is said in chapter 2. Kripan means wretched seekers and beggars. Kripana phala hetavah. Phal, for everything I want. Let's stop being wretched seekers of material wealth, because that is never going to satisfy us forever. Santushtaha. Santushti is our greatest treasure itself, and it's inside. So why do you need a door handle? And that was a beautiful image that stuck with me for a long time, that we stand outside the door and the door handle is actually inside. Now, when we talk of Santushti, I am tempted to talk about the story which you may have heard about. This great king at whose door a fakir came, at the palace doors, a fakir came, and so the king said, okay, offer him something. He told his attendants, unko kuch donate kar do, because in India there's a custom that fakir, by the way, is not a beggar. Fakir, that's why Kabir says, Laga man fakiri mein. Fakir is the one who is actually a seeker and has lost interest in sansari accumulation. But for his nirvah, for his sustenance, he has to beg. And actually all the swamis of many of the ashrams, by the way, are expected to beg for their food. Even though they are jnanis and they are teachers and they teach the Upanishads, they are expected to not earn money, because they are not expected to handle money. So how do they sustain themselves? They are supposed to go door to door and take bhiksha. Bhiksham dehi. Even the Buddhist monks were supposed to do that. It's part of the fakir tradition. Bhiksham dehi. And the household which offers the food feels blessed. Actually, they feel blessed कि मेरे द्वार पर भिक्षा मांगने आया है. So the fakir is actually a person in India, and the only civilization in the world actually, where a fakir is respected for his ability to renounce the world. We don't have the courage to do it. They have the courage to do it. So we are supposed to feel blessed that they are at the door. So it is not out of condescending condescendence that the king said, okay, give him something. He said, fakir aaye hain, please unko de do kuch. The fakir in this particular story said, no, I will not accept Diksha from a servant. I want to be offered only by the king. This is my condition. The king said, oh, is that your condition? Why? So the fakir said, what can a servant offer me? He is already a servant. I am not going to accept. So the king said, oh, acha, okay. So bring me your bowl. Now the fakir said, I have another condition. The king said, oh, now you have another condition. What is your condition? The fakir said, I have a begging bowl and my condition is that I challenge you, you have to fill it up to the brim. The king said, okay, show me your bowl. And it was a small little bowl, although it was encrusted with gems. It was a very special bowl. And the king said, oh, he laughed at him and he said, what do you think? I have the greatest wealth in the world. Now my ego is touched. You think I cannot fill your bowl? What nonsense. Come on. So he took some gems from his treasury and he dropped it into the fakir's bowl. And what do you think happened? The gems vanished deep inside the bowl and there wasn't even a sound of the gems falling. The king was incensed. He said, what is this? Bring me more gems. And he took a handful of gems once more and then once again and again. And it kept happening that the gems kept falling into the bowl and not a sound, and it kept disappearing. And the fakir laughed and said, oh king, I told you this is my challenge. You have to fill my bowl to the brim and you're unable to do it. And the king at last, when his treasury was empty, fell at the feet of the fakir and he said, what is the secret of this bowl? Please tell me. And the fakir said, it's simple. Don't you understand by now that this bowl is made up of the human mind? It's a human mind. No matter how much you fill it, there is always something more that it seeks. And so it becomes like a bottomless pit. That is the secret of my bowl and carrying the human mind with me. And no amount of outside treasure is, because even the richest king in that other story, remember, where the Sufi had said that I have a beautiful garden, I want to give it away to that person who is completely fulfilled. And who stood at the door? A king who had the greatest wealth. Why was he at the door of the Sufi saying, give me your beautiful garden, when he had so much? That's the human mind. He still stood at the door. So, to teach this great lesson to the king, the fakir had brought this magic bowl. That santushti in the common mind, if you let the mind go its own way, it is never going to tell you, हाँ, अब मैं संतुष्ट हूँ, I am okay, I am fine, I am complete, I am fulfilled. The mind never seems to have that vocabulary. And if it does for a temporary period, it wakes up again every time there is some temptation or an offering or something that my neighbor has done and I want to do it also, or something that my neighbor has and I want that object also. It just needs a small trigger. The mind is not strong enough. It needs a very small trigger for it to be shaken once again from its so-called small fulfillment, from small objects, from temporary objects of sansar. And therefore Bhagavan says in the same line, Santushtah satatam yogi. Why are you not satatam, steady in your meditation? Because I want you to be yatatma dridha nishchayaha. Yatatma, which means self-controlled. It's the mind that is unable to control itself. You may be okay and you say intellectually, of course I understand. I want to be evolved. I want to be highly evolved in fact. So, but the smallest temptation is a trigger. Bhagavan says, Yatatma, you will not have self-control unless you are Dridha Nishchayaha. Last word in the first line. Dridha Nishchayaha. What is our Nishchaya actually? Dridha means firm. Nishchaya means conviction. What is our Nishchaya actually? Our conviction. Most of us are completely convinced that if I have a certain kind of status or job or salary or bank balance or certain amount of money or property or man and samman and security, I am good. I'm good. I don't need anything else. Osho used to say very often, he used to say, वो जो कहता है कि मुझे इस दुनिया से जो चाहिए था मटेरियली मुझे मिल गया है और कुछ इसमें मैं इसी में विचरता हूँ, वो बहुत अभागा होता है, अभागा. How unfortunate is such a one who has firm conviction in the material goodness or material fulfillment of the world, not knowing it's temporary. How unfortunate is such a person. So also Osho used to go on to say, सब कोई मेरे पास आते हैं और कहते हैं शांति, भगवान मुझे बता दो शांति कैसे मिलेगी, मुझे कोई भी रास्ता बता दो, I will follow you, I will take sannyas. He used to offer sannyas also, दीक्षा that is. मुझे शांति चाहिए, सब कोई कहता है शांति. कोई नहीं मेरे पास आके कहता मुझे सत्य चाहिए. I want to know the ultimate truth. सब कहते हैं मुझे शांति चाहिए. Yes, when you know the ultimate truth, Shanti will follow automatically. But such is the human mind. Having said that, our Dridha Nishchaya is in, conviction is in the sansar. कि हाँ मुझे इस संसार से मिल जाएगा, the joys of the external world. So this materialistic conviction is not going to go very far. Bhagwan says, Mai arpita mano buddhihi, mujh mein conviction rakho. Second line he says, you have to be convinced that there is a satya which is beyond, there is a truth which is beyond this temporary world of materialistic consumerism that you are so busy consuming. We are busy becoming consumers actually all the time. Ye chahiye, wo chahiye. So he says, beyond that there is a higher truth. Find it in me. Mai arpita, mujh mein hai, mere paas hai. Krishna, how beautifully he is with arms open. Bhagwan haath khole khade hue hain, and we are not sinking into his arms with a loving hug. He is ready and waiting for us to just sink into his arms and give up all this nonsense of the world. And he says, you will find not only Param Shanti, which has been talked about in earlier chapters, but the Param Satya. So, Mai Arpita Mano Buddhi, Man or Buddhi, Mujhme Arpit Kar do na, come into my waiting arms, Bhagwan says, and have conviction in me that highest truth is the only truth in the world. Ye conviction rakh lo, Dridha Nishchaya. If you change, then if you come into my arms, Yo Mad Bhaktaha Same Priyaha. Of course, I love such seekers. They are my favorites, he says. My favorites. This reminds me of talking about the conviction in the outer world, you know. It reminds me of the story. Again, in his biography, you will find it, Socrates. Socrates stood, and I may have talked about this story before. Socrates stood outside a shop window for a very long time. And he gazed and gazed at the objects displayed in the window until the shop assistant came to the door of the shop and he said, may I help you, sir? What is it that I can offer you? And Socrates was smiling all the time and he had stood there for a long time and he said, offer me? Oh, nothing. I'm just happy thinking that how happy I am without all these things in my life. कि मैं सब कुछ देख रहा हूँ विंडो में, ये भी है, वो भी है, the most luxurious bed covers and home appliances and electronic appliances and new technology and new cars and new homes, offers for new bungalows and also new, what are they called? Farmhouses, second home as they call it, home away from home. There are so many offers in the window and I'm feeling happy, Socrates said, feeling that how happy I am without all this. So having known that my conviction is in the right place, in the ultimate truth, I am happy, convinced and santushtaha. Socrates found his ultimate happiness in santushti, his greatest treasure. So if I have my greatest treasure, then I am a millionaire. Why will a millionaire then seek after small crumbs small little crumbs of happiness and plastic toys. Yes, even our Toyota Corolla or Toyota, this is other model, Toyota Corolla, and all our SUVs and Kias and Lamborghinis and Mercedes, they are plastic toys. like the ones we played with when we were young. Same way, we have got over our plastic toys and our balloons and our exhilaration about those toys. But when will we get over our exhilaration and attraction and attachment to these bigger toys, but still toys, our Toyotas? We have only graduated from toys to Toyotas. That's why Bhagavan says, your greatest treasures are these. What? Your whole personality then will glow with the tej of Santushtaha Satatam Yogi. Yatatma is self-control. Dridha Nishchayaha Mayyarpita Mano Buddhihi Yo Madbhaktas Same Priyaha. How beautifully he has said that these qualities will bring you directly to me. But that's not all. There is this great mental beauty and intellectual equipoise that is to be had by some more qualities which are coming up in verse number 15. So that we'll see in the next segment. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti Shanti 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 Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate ॐ शान्ति शान्ति पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते 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 ॐ शान्ति शान्ति पूर्णमुदच्यते।